Stop buying these 2026 and 27 model years. I've got 4 modern classics. They're reliable, they're long-lasting, they're fun to drive, and they're much better looking than any of this new stuff on the market. That's right, these 4 modern classics are going to grossly outlast and still be on the road long after these 2026 model year cars are gone in the scrapyard. Let's get into it now. First modern classic that I really should have bought one when I had a chance. Well, we bought an XV70 Toyota Camry, but we bought the 4-cylinder version. There's a much better version, the naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6 in the XV70. Those are absolutely amazing, but there's not many on the road. Everybody holds on to them. So if you find one, they're a gem. These were built between 2018 and 2024 because in 25, it all changed and Camry became a hybrid only. This 3.5-liter V6 engine, called the 2GR FKS engine, featured a wonderful naturally aspirated drivetrain that would run hundreds of thousands of miles. It featured an 8-speed automatic transmission called the UA80E. It was only front-wheel drive, but it did have 301 horsepower and about 267 pounds of torque. The fuel economy was around 26 miles per gallon, but guess what? Even better, 0 to 60 miles per hour in a brisk 5.6 to 5.7 seconds. These beautiful 3.5-liter V6 Camrys were featured in 2018 to 2024 XSE, the XLE, and the TRD popped up in 2020 to 2024. And the TRD gave you a beautiful set of wheels, unique paints, color schemes, and a beautiful little wing on the rear, which actually made it look sporty. When these Camrys came out new, the TRD featured about a $35,000 sticker price, while the XSE and XLE were about $38,000, $39,000. Beauty is a clean, solid example with no accidents and low mileage can be had for between $26,000 and $29,000 US, which means it is a bit of a discount, but it's well worth it. With that V6, they never will make that engine again. The XV70 is such a low-cost car to maintain. Brake pads, $400, $500, $600 per axle. Transmission drain and refill, maybe as much as $500. The spark plugs, maybe $700. You only need to do those about 120,000 miles. Coolant service, maybe $200 to $250. And the average annual maintenance only totals maybe $500 or $600. The added benefit is the 2GR FKS has a timing chain. You're not dealing with that pesky timing belt nonsense. It's a simple engine with a strong, durable drivetrain. Doesn't leak, doesn't break, and generally just doesn't wear out. Now, of course, it's not all roses. There are a few little minor things. The first thing is the transmission. Some people do complain. A little bit of a stutter off of a start, a hard shift from second to third, another hard shift from third to fourth. It's not that it's overly problematic. However, unfortunately, it isn't the best to drive. It's not the most exciting or engaging. It's just something that gets the job done. Now, allegedly, there's a lawsuit where a customer actually claims that the engine and transmission combinations are great, except the transmission just doesn't live up, and unfortunately, the transmission is prone to failure because of cooking transmission fluid under hard load or hard driving for excessive periods of time. The second issue is coils. But that's just basically maintenance. Spark plugs and ignition coils are common issues. Some of them are replacement parts, some of them are maintenance, some of them are repairs. If you have an ignition coil failure, it could be misfire, stumbling, poor idle, and generally poor performance overall. You might even trigger a check engine light, but that's a relatively minor issue and something that you're going to experience on any car at any level. There's a third issue, and it's a timing cover oil leak. Some people comment where you might see a little oil dribbling or moisture on the front end of the engine. Yes, it's a relatively minor issue, but if it gets bad enough, you start to see drops collecting on the driveway, you may want to deal with that. That, unfortunately, is one of the most expensive issues that you might encounter with a Camry, and you might be looking in the neighborhood of $200 to $2,500 to rectify that issue. That being said, it's not catastrophic, it's rarely a problem, and it's just something that it's almost more optional if it happens at all. It's not uncommon at all to hear of these cars go 2, 3, and even 400,000 miles. The added bonus, timing chain, no turbos to maintain. Of course, the oil stays clean longer because you're not dealing with those issues. And a massive win is it has both the direct and port fuel injection, which means the direct fuel injection gives it better metering and performance. But unlike many other cars that don't also incorporate a port fuel injection, those start to carbon up. This doesn't, because the port fuel injection now washes the backs of the intake's valves, so you never have carbon fouling, walnut blasting to deal with, or added maintenance to clean the intake valves. This 8th generation Camry was reliable, performs well, low cost of maintenance, and honestly, it's a dream engine. It's too bad that engine is finally gone. Sure, you can find it in a Lexus IS350, but that's really all you're going to find it in, and you're going to pay a substantial amount more money to get into the Lexus over the Camry. The second gem is one you really can't ignore. If you like the performance luxury driving experience that comes out of Europe, this is one of those cars you just definitely get your hands on. It's the F30 generation of the 340 BMW. They were built in 2016 to 2018 and featured the beautiful B58 engine, the first, the overhaul, the replacement of the outgoing N55, and even worse, the N54. This new and improved B58 has been proven still to this day as one of the most reliable engines that BMW has ever created. The BMW's internal designation for this engine is B58 B30, featured 320 horsepower and about 330 pound-feet of torque, with the 0 to 60 run cracking down in about 4.6 seconds. Yes, you can get all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. It's a true performance machine. And when these were brand new, they stickered at $45,900 for the rear-wheel drive in US bucks, and they were $47,900 for the all-wheel drive or X-Drive system. Now, you'll find on the secondary market the prices vary substantially, anywhere from $17,000 up to $30,000. See, because condition and mileage are a factor. Like any European car, it's something to be watching out for. Pre-purchase inspection, low mileage with no accidents and a good service history, that's going to get you a great car. Now, as mentioned, they come in the X-Drive all-wheel drive, also the glorious 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, which shifts and predicts every one of your moves. It's one of the best transmissions on the market, both reliability-wise and performance. It knows your behaviors and tries to replicate as best as possible. But where the real surprise is, it's almost a unicorn. You could actually get a manual version of the 340 in the F30. That's right, a 6-speed manual gearbox, row your own gears, means the F30 was one of the strongest enthusiast cars BMW's ever created. It's reliable, it's fun, it's furious, and it's just beautiful. The cost of maintenance is expected to be a little more than the Camry. Plug change up to $500. You might have to do that every 50,000 miles. Ignition coils, about $700 for the set. Brake fluid, a couple $100. Transmission service every $900, even though they kind of tell you it's for life. We all know that that's not really the case. The brake job ranges from $1,000 to about $1,200 per axle, and a coolant service can run you up towards $300. But sometimes they package that up with a bunch of other giveaways and freebies, and you wind up getting a much better deal. The annual service cost for the BMW 340 and the F30 generation ranges from $1,000 to about $1,800 a year, depending on which service and how far you've got to go. Also, depending on how many miles you're putting on, will have an impact. It's not cheap, but as they say, you've got to pay to play, and this is truly one of the legends that you really have to try out for yourself. Now, there's 3 common issues with some of these B58 engines in the 340. The PCV. You might experience poor driving conditions. You might experience oil consumption, poor fuel economy. If you left the PCV long enough, it could actually take a toll on the engine. But generally, it's smoking, it's not running as well, and you kind of know that. On top of it, the oil filter housing leaks. We all know about that. You could mix oil and coolant and oil, or just leak externally. The oil filter housing is often separated by these strange gaskets and rubberized O-rings, which tend to leak with age and time, especially since you've got turbos under the hood. That tends to take a toll, and it is a costly venture. I did one on my old N54. I know exactly what it's like. It took me about 6 or 7 hours on the driveway, but I got it taken care of. It's a decent DIY project. And the oil filter housing, if you take it to the dealer, can cost anywhere from $1,000 to about $2,500, depending on how many parts you need and how far gone the issue is or the leaks have become. Other system issues of the coolant wear, of course, because of the extra heat under the engine. We also know that some of the pipes that are snapped together, they can leak. Oil filter housing, of course, you can lose coolant there. But most importantly, you can also find yourself leaking coolant through the thermostat housing, through the water pump, which now coincidentally is mechanical, which is a big improvement. But any cooling system component can be a potential leak point. and they're not cheap. There's lots of plastic under the hood, lots of heat under the hood, and those two don't mix very well, and they never really have. If there's one Achilles for these BMWs, it's cooling system. Just make sure on a pre-purchase inspection, you're finding one that's been looked after and those cooling systems have been addressed. The bottom line is this F30 generation, when outfitted with a manual gearbox, is arguably one of the best enthusiast cars on the planet. It's also one of BMW's most reliable drivetrains they've ever created. It's a triple threat, and definitely a car you need to strongly consider if you're thinking about buying something yesteryear that will likely still outlast the new crap coming out on today's market. The third gem, and you've got to expect, the Lexus GX460. Yes, the GX460 was sadly replaced in 2024 by the new incoming GX550, which has this new 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6, which we all have heard so much about with these catastrophic engine failures and thousands of recalls across the industry, means that the outgoing GX460 is truly a legend and one of its own kind. And it's one that you need to get your hands on. Find one that's been well looked after, babied, and has reasonable miles on it, and you'll be welcome to an SUV by Lexus that'll last forever. Because the Lexus GX460 ran from 2010 to about 2023. It features the 4.6-liter naturally aspirated V8 called the 1URFE. These engines produce 301 horsepower and about 329 pound-feet of torque. They featured also the 6-speed automatic transmission called the A760F, which was also a fairly durable unit. These Lexus vehicles featured a full-time four-wheel drive with a central locking differential. The beauty is they could also tow 6,500 pounds. Any boat or small trailer, no problem. Back in 2010, they stickered for about $51,000, but after price creep and adding options galore, by the time 2023 rolled around, you could expect to pay mid-$70,000 for a highly equipped unit. Now, as of 2026, if you want to find a late model GX460 with relatively low miles, I would still expect to pay $40,000, $50,000, maybe even $60,000 US. Again, you've got to pay to play, and it's a quality vehicle, and it may even be one of the last vehicles you ever have to buy because they're known to run hundreds of thousands of miles, with certain examples going as far as 1,000,000 miles. The beauty is maintenance isn't that bad. Brakes up to $1,000 all the way around. Transfer case and differential fluids, maybe do that every once in a while for $500. Spark plugs for about $900 every 120,000 miles or so. And your average annual maintenance is anywhere from $700 to $1,000. So it's cheaper than a BMW, a little more costly than a Toyota, but it's well worth the trouble. But again, as always, nothing's perfect, and the valley plate coolant leak is one such issue. Might cost you $1,000 to $2,500 to rectify the cooling issues that you might see with these vehicles. If it happens, you're probably going to see it in that 80 to 150,000 mile range, and it's not a showstopper, just something to be aware of. The timing cover oil leak, again, like the V6s, might also leak. You might see oil seepage at the front, dripping on the road, and that may cost you $2,000 to $4,000, but it's not that common of an issue, and it's certainly not that significant. If it does leak, you can still drive. It's not a reliability concern. And as well, the KDSS hydraulic suspension system. It's hydraulics that allow this vehicle to articulate and manages the ride quality. It is also ultimately an off-road vehicle, but it doesn't come cheap. I mean, you could expect to pay as much as $2,000 to $2,500 to rectify any kind of problems related to the system. Yeah, ask any of those Forerunners running a limited from a few years back, and they're dealing with similar kind of problems. But it's not the end of the world, just some issues to be aware of. The vehicles aren't getting cheaper with age, but again, the fundamentals, engine, transmission, are durable. There will be a few things that you've got to clean up, but ultimately a pre-purchase inspection should flush out, pardon the pun, any kind of issues that may be pre-existing from the previous owner. This 4.6-liter V8 is also touted as one of the most reliable engines by Toyota and Lexus ever created and ever produced. They have been seen to run as many as 250 to 400,000 miles. Usually that's on engine and transmissions from original matching engines. These are those vehicles that sadly are going to be missed. As we go down the road and we see more of these GX550s, turbos, V6s, and more engine problems with long block replacements, we're all longing for the day when they had those NA V8s that just would go and go and go. Now there is another gem. You have to give these a look. And it's a 2013 to 2017 ninth generation Honda Accord. Many of them are outfitted with a manual transmission, which makes them even better. And a naturally aspirated V6? What? Like, they don't even create vehicles like this anymore. This is absolutely a gem. The modern Accords are nothing more than a little hybrid putt-putt these days. When I look back at these old school Accords, sure, they had timing belts and a little bit of maintenance, but boy, were they fun, punchy, torquey. You don't see many around because everybody holds on to these things. So if you find one on the used car market, scoop it up. Make sure all the issues have been looked after, but it's definitely a champ. Because in 2013 to 2017, there was a Honda Accord Coupe that you could get with the naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6 called the J35Y2. And a 6-speed manual gearbox. There was also a touring version of these vehicles from 2016 to 2017. They often came with the 6-speed manual gearbox, 278 horsepower, about 252 pound-feet of torque, had way more than enough performance that you could ever ask for. Only drawback is they were front-wheel drive, but that didn't really stop you. Torque steer wasn't that big of an issue in these cars. Now, when these were new, they stickered anywhere from $31,000 to about $36,000, depending on the state of trim. But today, you can find them used for $20,000 to $25,000 with low mileage and well-looked-after examples. Make sure you do that pre-purchase inspection. Watch out for the Carfax. Make sure you're not buying a broken, damaged car that's possibly been underwater, and then you can be welcome to one of the best cars that money can buy that will still grossly outlast any of the new Accords. Pads and rotors, $700. Transmission fluid, maybe $150. Coolant service, $250. Spark plugs, maybe $500 every 100,000 miles or so. The timing belt service might ring up about $1,500, but honestly, it's only maybe every 100,000 miles or thereabouts. So it's not something that's always in the back of your mind. Do it once, wait a bunch of years, do it again. Just stay on top of it and you're good to go. So the three drawbacks with the Honda Accords, of course, are the timing belt service. That's something that a lot of other manufacturers aren't dealing with these days, and particularly Toyota and Lexus aren't using timing belts these days, where Honda is elected to continue on with that engine. Spend that $1,500 every 7 years, not a big issue. Now, because it's a manual and depending on how you drive, the clutch can be a factor. That might be $1,500 to $2,000 if you're a little bit rough on the gearbox. And another big one is the variable cylinder management, or the VCM, which you could start to see poor fuel economy, poor running, oil consumption, and in an ultimate worst case scenario with neglect, abuse, and incorrect maintenance, you could see catastrophic failure. Never been a fan of that. Ask GM how that's working out for them too. But this is just something that we have to live with. Outside of that, these are absolutely bulletproof vehicles and will likely outlast just about anything that's rolling off the assembly line today in 2026. With all of that said, everybody, please do drop a line. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these solutions, any of these vehicles or recommendations. Please do check out these videos over here. They're going to help the channel so we can continue delivering great content for you. If you're looking for cars and you're really interested in making the right car buying purchase, this is the place. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Catch you then. Bye-bye.